Chapter 61 There is no one to match. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The selection competition is officially underway. The referee stepped out and motioned for the competitors from both sides to take the stage. Anyone confident enough to sign up for the inner court selection is typically a 7-star fighting master or higher, otherwise, they'd just be embarrassing themselves. That's why the battles are so intense, especially when you get evenly matched opponents going head-to-head. It's a real clash of titans. Spectacular displays of fighting spirit are common. At the Huangjie second team's base, Xiao Zhe stood with Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy, analyzing the fights happening in the square. Xiao Yu stood nearby with her group of friends, seemingly watching the matches, but while she looked like she was paying attention to the fights, she was actually eavesdropping on Xiao Zhe's analysis, hearing their breakdown of the battles. She couldn't help feeling a little down, compared to them. Her talent was nothing special. Xiao Zhe noticed Xiao Yu and waved her over. "Hey, cousin Xiao Yu, if you want to hear what we're saying, just come closer." Xiao Zhe said with a smile. Hearing Xiao Zhe's familiar tone, the slight distance in Xiao Yu's heart vanished. Xiao Yu walked over, and her friends followed. Suddenly, Xiao Zhe was surrounded by girls. The male students who were watching Xiao Zhe were instantly jealous. Xiao Zhe's male classmates didn't dare get close. The mix of fragrances was overwhelming, and Xiao Zhe realized his senses had become even sharper. Although Xiao Yu and her friends had joined the group, they didn't quite integrate into Xiao Zhe's inner circle. They didn't even have a chance to chime in. The level of analysis from Xiao Zhe and the others was beyond them. They could only listen intently, absorbing every word and comparing it to the fights in the square, a satisfied look spreading across their faces. So many ways to fight. Compared to the Wind Attribute fighter, the Earth Attribute cultivator has the upper hand. The former didn't capitalize on their strengths and tried to get an early lead. The Earth Attribute cultivator is using this opening and will win, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Xiao Zhe commented while watching the fight. The other two nodded in agreement. Xiao Yu and her group watched the square. Sure enough, after a few more exchanges, the Earth Attribute cultivator found an opening. With Earth Attribute energy enveloping their legs, they landed a powerful kick to the Wind Attribute fighter's abdomen, ending the match. Xiao Yu and the others looked at Xiao Zhe with admiration. Xue and I couldn't resist moving closer to Xiao Zhe. But after Xiao Suner shot her a look, she immediately backed down, shrinking back to Xiao Yu, who pinched her waist. Xiao Yu whispered in Xueni's ear, "You're too eager. My cousin's not even an adult yet. What are you trying to do?" "I can't help it. He's just so cute and talented." Xue and I whined. Xiao Yu rolled her eyes. "Don't say I didn't warn you. My cousin's not as simple as he seems." "Too late," Snowy said, a bit scared. "I already figured that out." Xiao Zhe and the others chuckled at the conversation behind them. When Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy saw Xiao Zhe smiling, they both rolled their eyes at him. Xiao Zhe shrugged, indicating he was innocent. Lin Kai, Class 1, Xian Class, versus Xiao Zhe, Class 2, Huang Class. The referee's announcement rang out, and Xiao Suner said playfully, "This is all you now." Before going on stage, Xiao Zhe ruffled Xiao Suner's hair. His opponent was already on stage, holding a dark blue spear with a magic core embedded in it. "Xiao Zhe, even if you're a big shot at the academy, don't think I'll just give up," Lin Kai declared with passion. Xiao Zhe nodded and smiled. "Looking forward to seeing what you've got." Everyone watched the square nervously, full of anticipation. How would this legendary figure perform? A large group of Xiao Zhe's fans started cheering him on, their shouts echoing through the sky. "Begin," the referee announced the start of the match. "I will." Lin Kai's words were cut short. Bang, star, the dark blue spear clattered to the ground, followed by the sound of a body falling. Lin Kai was out cold. Xiao Zhe, on the other hand, hadn't even moved. The square fell silent. Even the spectators in the stand stared in disbelief. No one had any idea what had just happened. Everyone was thinking, what was that? Why did he fall before Xiao Zhe even did anything? Xiao Zhe looked at the referee, who quickly rushed to Lin Kai's side. He checked Lin Kai and confirmed he was unconscious. The referee immediately raised his hand and announced the result. "In this match, Lin Kai is unconscious. The winner is Xiao Zhe, that it was the shortest match of the day, but it had everyone talking. Of course, no one believed Lin Kai just fainted on his own. It had to be Xiao Zhe's doing. The audience was a little disappointed at not seeing a real fight, but they were also incredibly curious. What kind of trick had Xiao Zhe used to knock out his opponent instantly? The other contestants in the inner court selection had serious expressions. They hadn't even seen what Xiao Zhe did. If they couldn't understand their opponent, how could they possibly win? Xiao Zhe had used the same technique he used in the class competition, water attribute energy combined with the poisonous power of calamity, but Xiao Zhe's control was far more refined now. The poisonous effects of calamity were far beyond what these students could handle. However, because it was an inter-college competition, Xiao Zhe amplified the coma effect while ensuring it wasn't fatal. On the high platform overlooking the square, several old men were surprised to see Xiao Zhe returning. That kid's strength has really improved. Even a Dou Ling doesn't have this level of control over fighting spirit, does he? Hu Qian said with a smile to the stern-faced old man beside him. This was Elder Hua from the alchemy department, one of the most skilled alchemists in Canaan Academy. Elder Hua looked at Xiao Zhe with intensity and said meaningfully. His unique fighting spirit is extraordinary. The academy has no record of anything like it. That's his own good fortune. Let's not pry too much. Hu Qian said calmly, and Elder Hua didn't push the matter. If he keeps this up, this selection competition won't be much of a contest. Hearing Elder Hua's words, Hu Qian's mouth twitched. Old man Hua, don't say that just because you're bored. Why don't you help me come up with a solution? That is your responsibility. After Elder Hua finished speaking, he leaned back comfortably in his chair. Hu Qian was a little helpless. The medicine refining department was independent of the internal and external departments, and he couldn't control Elder Hua. Fine, I'll figure it out myself. Hu Qian watched the fight between the two students in the square, and an idea quietly took root in his mind. Maybe a free-for-all was the answer. Chapter 62, Successive Promotions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The second member of Xiao Zhe's group to appear was Xiao Suner. Her opponent was another pretty girl. Xiao Zhe, watching from the sidelines, thought her face looked vaguely familiar. He racked his brain for a moment, but couldn't quite place her. Shrugging it off, he figured if he couldn't remember her, she probably wasn't anyone important. As soon as the ref gave the signal, Suner became a blur of golden light, transforming into a nimble butterfly. In a flash, she was right in front of her opponent, a pulse of golden light from her palm, and before the other girl could even blink, she was out of the ring. Another quick win, but this time the crowd roared with applause. That dazzling golden light was a real visual treat. Plus, it was two gorgeous girls going at it. Short and sweet, but definitely a crowd pleaser. Next up was the little medical fairy, facing off against a tough-looking dude. He was clearly a student, but with a face like he'd been living in the wilderness. He looked more like a seasoned adventurer. Hey, maybe you should just forfeit, the burly guy said to the little medical fairy. Wouldn't want anyone getting hurt. But his eyes weren't full of concern, more like a flicker of fear. He was scared of who she knew. Growing up rough in an adventure group before somehow getting into Canaan Academy, he knew how things worked. Taking out this girl would probably earn him Xiao Zhe's wrath. The little medical fairy saw right through him, smiling and shaking her head. Maybe you should worry about yourself. Things can get dicey out there. The guy's face darkened, knowing there was no talking her out of it. Guess he had no choice but to go all in. If he ended up facing Xiao Zhe in the next round, well, that was just bad luck. Alright, then let's do this. He gripped the massive sword strapped to his back, yanked it free, and swung it around with surprising force. A thick layer of earth-toned fighting spirit shimmered around his body. He might have been good with people, but he was no slouch in a fight. Having reached the level of a great fighter, even in the inner court selection, that was a rare achievement. The crowd went wild, eager to see a real showdown. The big guy planted his right foot, and charged. Growing up on the road, he knew better than to underestimate anyone. Even if this girl looked delicate, he was going to fight like his life depended on it. He wasn't letting up until she was out of the game. Seeing him coming, the little medical fairy's eyes narrowed, but she showed no fear. He swung his sword, holding back just enough so he didn't accidentally cleave the poor girl in half, but he was thinking too slow. The little medical fairy darted forward, moving with incredible speed. His eyes widened, something was wrong. He quickly reversed his swing, trying to block, but she was already on him. He dropped the sword, throwing an elbow. She raised her hand to block, her pale, delicate palm a stark contrast to his beefy arm. She didn't try to meet his strength head-on. Instead, using the force of his blow, she spun away to the side. At the same time, she slapped his fighting spirit armor on the ribs. There was a sickening hiss of corrosion, a deep palm print appeared on the armor. The crowd gasped. This was armor made by an Earth-type cultivator, known for its defense. How could it be damaged so easily? He knew he was in trouble, scrambling to create some distance. Too late. She was all over him. The hissing sound continued as her corrosive energy ate away at his armor. Bang, he dropped his sword. He knew the girl had the power to kill him with a single touch. The damaged armor wouldn't withstand another attack. Next, that terrifying palm would be coming for his skin. I forfeit. Thank you for going easy on me. The little medical fairy waved, wiping sweat from her forehead. In close combat like that, one slip-up could mean serious injury. She'd just been dancing with death. The crowd erupted in cheers, praising them both for an amazing fight. The big guy smiled wryly, dispelling his fighting spirit, picking up his sword, and walking off the stage. With his strength as a great fighter, he should have been a shoo-in for the top 50, but fate had other plans. He'd run into a beast in the knockout rounds and got eliminated. Up on the platform, Vice Principal Hu Qian and Old Man Hua from the medicine refining department exchanged surprised glances. I didn't realize she had that. Anyone around that kid ends up being a monster. If it gets out of control, will we even be able to stop it? Hu Qian frowned. It's a major threat. According to the records, its wielders all met terrible ends, often causing widespread destruction. Hu Qian glanced at Xiao Zhe and the two girls, his frown deepening. Kid, you're a real headache. After a few days of intense competition, the top 50 were finally decided. Xiao Zhe and his group all made the cut. No one Xiao Zhe faced even made him break a sweat. As soon as the match started, they were out cold. Xiao Suner was equally quick, dismantling opponents. The little medical immortal was scary. Her non-poison body made for brutal fights. Everything she touched eroded, making her opponents scream. The three of them were totally different. Xiao Zhe was weird, Xiao Suner was straightforward, and the little medical fairy was brutal. Vice Principal Hu Qian stepped forward to explain the rules of the top 50 competition. I'm sure you're all tired of the one-on-one duels. So, this year, we're changing things up. It's called Last Man Standing. All 50 of you will be in the arena. Whoever's left at the end wins. The rest of the rankings will be determined by the order you fall out of the arena or can't fight anymore. The students looked confused by the sudden change, but the spectators loved it. More fighting was more entertainment for them. The cheers were deafening. Alright, let's get the top 50 out here. Chapter 63, One Against Many. Determine the top 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 50 students walked into the square, sizing each other up. Even Hanyu, who'd been through the inner court selection before, felt a twinge of hesitation. Then it hit her. The vice dean's rules didn't say anything about not teaming up. That meant working together could be a huge advantage in this free-for-all. Meanwhile, Bai Cheng's voice boomed across the arena. Alright, everyone, we all saw what happened in the last round. Xiao Zhe and his crew straight up dominated and won the championship. If we don't take them out early, they're gonna hog the top 5 spots in the inner court selection. Take M out, and I, Bai Cheng, will only take one spot and you can duke it out for the rest. Bai Cheng's words were like throwing gasoline on a fire. Everyone knew Xiao Zhe and his group were way stronger than the rest of them combined. If they weren't eliminated, those three would snatch up 2 of the top 5 spots. Even if some folks were willing to ride Xiao Zhe's coattails, they'd still be scrambling for only 2 places. Better to throw in with Bai Cheng or Hanyu. They'd take up even fewer slots. Standing in the corner, Xiao Zhe listened with a faint smile, not bothering to argue. He knew that if he called for it, most of the students would rally to him and shut out the others. but that wouldn't really change things. The leftovers would still be fighting over those same 2 spots. The students in the square, who were on the fence, glanced at Xiao Zhe, waiting to hear what he'd say, but to their disappointment, he stayed silent. It was obvious. Like Bai Cheng said, the 3 of them were gonna take 3 spots, so, better to get rid of Xiao Zhe's group first. Sure, they'd shown some seriously weird abilities, but there was power in numbers, and that gave the other students a boost of confidence. Soon, most of the students were huddled under Bai Cheng's banner. Another bunch went with Han Yu. Xiao Zhe and his people stuck to their corner of the square. A few arrogant loners hadn't joined any side. 8 people hung out in the no-man's land between the 3 factions. If Han Yu and Bai Cheng wanted to jump Xiao Zhe, they'd have to get through those 8 first, and those 2 also wanted to pick off any stragglers before someone else did, so, those 8 who didn't pick a side got picked off first. Ending up at the bottom of the heap, Xiao Zhe looked at the bruised and battered students with a touch of pity. If you're not strong enough, don't try to be a lone wolf. Then again, once a cultivator's mind is set, it's hard to change. Xiao Zhe wasn't about to try changing anyone's mind, so he just watched. Before long, Bai Cheng and Han Yu turned their forces toward Xiao Zhe. Xiao Zhe, you want us to knock you out, or are you gonna throw in the towel? Bai Cheng held a light yellow spear, oozing confidence. His army of followers was the reason. In fights between low-level cultivators, numbers can really matter. As long as it isn't a total mismatch in power, more fighters usually win. Even if Xiao Zhe's group had shown some crazy fighting skills, this was just an inner court trial, right? No way some super strong spirit fighter was gonna show up. As long as everyone was still in the great fighter stage, numbers were everything. Han Yu didn't say a word, just showed off her weapon. Taking out Xiao Zhe first was the smartest move for her team. Most of her followers were women, so they were outnumbered. Worth mentioning, each of them was wrapped in a fighting spirit gauze, and the great fighting masters even wore thick fighting spirit armor. Xiao Zhe's earlier moves had really spooked them. Only with full protection would they dare get near him. That cautious look made Xiao Zhe chuckle to himself. If Doqi gauze and armor could stop his powers, then all the effort he'd put into developing them would be a waste, wouldn't it? Xiao Zhe looked at the 2 menacing crowds, ignored Bai Cheng's challenge, and asked instead, "How about we just see how long you guys can last?" The moment he said that, weapons started clattering to the ground. The students following Han Yu and Bai Cheng dropped like flies, unconscious. According to the rules, that meant they were out of the fight. No way. That even Bai Cheng, one of the strongest fighters there, felt dizzy. The intense dizziness made him see double, and he barely stayed on his feet by leaning on his spear. Han Yu was in the same boat. Her eyes behind the fighting spirit armor were wide with shock. They'd taken all possible precautions, so how could this still affect them? When the crackling stopped, only 5 people were still standing: Xiao Zhe, Bai Cheng, and Han Yu barely standing. Even the vice dean hadn't expected this. He gave Old Man Hu a wry smile and said, "Looks like we shot ourselves in the foot. This kid's abilities are just too hard to defend against. You make up these rules, and you end up giving Xiao Zhe a huge advantage. This trial is ending in the most surprising way in history." Old Man Hu stared at the only 5 people left, a forced smile on his face. Hu Qian rolled his eyes. The audience was stunned by what they'd just seen. One person, taking down a bunch of Canaan College's best students, even by past inner court trial standards, that was unheard of. The audience was now dying to know what Xiao Zhe's abilities were. They'd witnessed something incredible. This inner court selection had been worth it just for that. After all, one person beating dozens of Canaan College geniuses was a story for the history books. Back in the square, Xiao Zhe spread his arms and said to Han Yu and Bai Cheng, "So, you 2 want me to send you packing, or will you quit on your own?" Bai Cheng looked furious. He'd said those exact words to Xiao Zhe just a few minutes ago, and now Xiao Zhe was throwing them back in his face. It was humiliating, but he also felt completely helpless. Against this weird ability, he didn't even have a chance. Han Yu shook her head and smiled sadly. "I'm happy making it to the top 5. No need for you to bother, Xiao Zhe. I'm out." She hadn't expected to run into such a monster. Even Lin Xiuya wasn't this monstrous. Bai Cheng glared at Xiao Zhe, gritting his teeth but saying nothing. Looks like Senior Bai Cheng wants to try his luck, never giving up until the very end. That's a great quality, but it's all about picking your battles. With that, Xiao Zhe flashed forward, appeared in front of Bai Cheng, and slapped him. Bai Cheng, dazed and confused, didn't even react. His body flew out and landed outside the square. The inner court selection was over. The inner court trials aren't long to write about. The protagonist is too strong now. If the Douling fights these great Dou masters, and the fighting goes back and forth, then the combat power will really collapse, so I arranged it a little faster. I beg you readers to keep reading. Now I recommend you to read it all. I beg you to use your little hands and pull it to the last page of the book. Thank you. Thanks to Apple Loves Orange for the tip. Shiza_monthly ticket support. Many thanks. Chapter 64 Entering the Library Again. A Cruel Comparison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With the announcement of the vice president, the inner court selection wrapped up in a way nobody saw coming. Everyone was buzzing about it, trying to figure out what made Xiao Zhe so special. Back in Canaan City, the gossip was non-stop. Xiao Zhe was like the sun, making every other student seem like they were just flickering candles. People are always drawn to the brightest star. He overshadowed not just his class but those that came after him, because no matter what you did, you'd always be compared to Xiao Zhe, and if you didn't measure up, your accomplishments just wouldn't seem like much. For years to come, students would be living in his shadow. As a top 5 finisher, Xiao Zhe got another shot at the library's treasures. He filled Xiao Suner and the little fairy in on the rules, since they were both going this time. No breach of secrecy there, but this time, Xiao Zhe wasn't after anything in particular. He was set when it came to fighting skills and techniques, and the library probably didn't have any elixirs he couldn't get elsewhere. He was taking it easy, treating it like a treasure hunt. If he stumbled on something cool, great. 3 days later, Xiao Zhe, Xiao Suner, and the little fairy headed for the library where the vice president was waiting. The delay was because Bai Cheng had been nursing his wounds from their little run-in. Otherwise, he would have been there the next day. When they arrived, they ran into Han Yu. Xiao Zhe gave her a friendly nod, and she smiled back. Xiao Zhe, thanks for going easy on me the other day, she said pointedly. Xiao Zhe shrugged. Hey, Bai Cheng's one stubborn dude. I just helped him tap out. Just then, Bai Cheng's grumpy face appeared. Xiao Zhe coughed, feeling a little awkward. Talking behind someone's back never felt great, even if it was the truth. Bai Cheng ignored them, marching straight into the library. Xiao Zhe didn't take it personally. He had just handed him a beating 3 days earlier. If Bai Cheng was all smiles, that would be spooky. Let's go. Don't want to keep the vice president waiting, Xiao Zhe said. Han Yu followed them inside. On the way, Han Yu chatted with Xiao Suner and the little fairy. Xiao Zhe kept quiet. Girl talk wasn't exactly his forte. Turns out, Han Yu wasn't as cold as she seemed. Maybe being on equal footing with Xiao Zhe and the others made her more approachable. They soon reached the vice president's office. The vice president saw Han Yu and Xiao Zhe together and looked pleased. The competition was fierce, and sticking together was the only way for new inner court students to survive. But seeing Bai Cheng, who'd arrived first, made him sigh. He knew what was going on. Bai Cheng obviously wanted nothing to do with Xiao Zhe and his crew, otherwise, they would have walked in together, like Han Yu. Now that everyone's here, let's cut the chit-chat and get you your rewards. After a few twists and turns, they were standing in front of the library. Xiao Zhe had been there before, so he played it cool. The little fairy and Xiao Suner gasped, impressed by Canaan College's foundation. They'd heard Xiao Zhe talk about it, but seeing it firsthand was something else. Bai Cheng and Han Yu were even more blown away. Alright, get in there. You've got 1 hour, and you can only take 1 item. Don't get greedy. You can grab as much as you want, but you'll only walk out with 1 thing. Hu Qian finished, and the 5 of them entered the library. Hu Qian, left outside, turned to the 2 elders with a grin. Wanna bet on what Xiao Zhe pulls out this time? That the 2 old men exchanged glances. Earth-level skills or something similar. High-level secret technique. Hu Qian chuckled. Xiao Zhe getting 2 Earth-level skills last time had clearly made an impression. He had high hopes for him. The elders were aiming high. I think he'll surprise us, Hu Qian said. The elders rolled their eyes. Helpful. Inside, streams of light zipped around. Xiao Zhe, to the astonishment of Han Yu and Bai Cheng, had already snagged 5 of them. He lined them up in front of the little fairy and Xiao Suner for them to choose. Like he said, Xiao Zhe was just hunting for treasure. These 5 items didn't really grab him, they were all high-level stuff, but nothing wowed him. Han Yu finally grabbed a silver scroll, looking satisfied. Bai Cheng looked annoyed, swapping items 3 times. Finally, he picked a blood-red scroll, and his face cleared up. The little fairy chose a jade brick filled with poison information, a comprehensive poison book. Xiao Suner went with a local fire skill for later. Han Yu eyed the little fairy and Xiao Suner with envy. Having Xiao Zhe around was awesome. If she didn't love the scroll, she might have swallowed her pride and asked for his help. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhe still hadn't decided, but he held on to his options. If nothing else caught his eye, he'd just grab something on his way out. Couldn't leave empty-handed, right? Suddenly, the energy shield trembled, and a powerful stream of light appeared. Bai Cheng lunged forward, eyes blazing, trying to grab it, but before he could touch it, he was blasted back by an energy wave. He convulsed, like he'd been struck by lightning, and collapsed. Han Yu scrapped her plan. She couldn't handle that much power. Xiao Zhe, on the other hand, felt something calling to him and reached out. The stream of light landed in his palm. Everyone stared, speechless, especially Bai Cheng, who was still coughing up blood on the floor. He'd been knocked out before he even got close. He thought this thing was too dangerous to touch. Then Xiao Zhe just waltzed up and snatched it. The difference was too much. Bai Cheng was furious. Chapter 65, The Immortal Pill. Ancient Elixir. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the library, everyone watched the item in Xiao Zhe's hands, their expressions a mix of awe and curiosity. As the energy swirling around it faded, a crystal sphere appeared, revealing a golden elixir sealed within, practically glowing. Xiao Zhe glanced at the inscription and read softly, "The Immortal Pill." Xiao Suner, hearing the name, couldn't help but exclaim, "What a badass name!" That the little medical fairy, ever curious, chimed in, "Xiao Zhe, what grade is it?" After reading the description, a spark ignited in Xiao Zhe's eyes. "A 7th grade elixir," he said, almost in disbelief. A wave of envy and shock rippled through the room. Bai Cheng's eyes burned with jealousy. I should have been the one. Why did it choose him? Han Yu was equally envious. The pill's appearance alone was impressive, but to learn it was a legendary 7th grade elixir. Amazing! Xiao Zhe was stoked. This trip was turning into a real treasure hunt. Even though the library contained medicinal herbs, elixirs were notoriously difficult to preserve. Xiao Zhe hadn't expected to find high-level elixirs here. Scrolls containing fighting skills and exercises were easier to store. Preserving elixirs, especially high-level ones, required special sealing methods. Canaan Academy, despite its resources, couldn't afford to hand out high-level elixirs to students as rewards. They usually kept them in-house. This immortal pill was a serious score, a testament to Canaan Academy's deep reserves. "Alright, let's head out," Xiao Zhe said. This trip was definitely worth it. With a flick of his wrist, he tucked the Vajra immortal pill into his robes, figuring he'd be searched by the elders on the way out and this way he wouldn't have to pull it out again. Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy, pleased with their own finds, followed Xiao Zhe. Han Yu hesitated, then glanced at the silver scroll in her hand. Taking a deep breath, she joined Xiao Zhe and the others. There were still 15 minutes left, but she doubted she'd find anything better. Seeing what Xiao Zhe had snagged, she realized she probably couldn't handle claiming anything high-level on her own. She was already happy with her scroll. Sometimes, greed just bites you in the butt. Bai Cheng stood alone, eyes bloodshot, consumed by frustration and resentment. Why did Xiao Zhe get the awesome elixirs? Driven by this bitterness, he vowed to stay until the bitter end. Outside, the elders and Hu Qian were stunned by Xiao Zhe's reward. A 7th grade elixir. The Vajra immortal pill, Hu Qian exclaimed. Even he was jealous of a 7th grade elixir. The elders guarding the pavilion exchanged glances, a flicker of desire in their eyes. A 7th grade elixir could benefit even them. This was a rare opportunity. Now in the hands of this kid, they were definitely envious, but they weren't about to steal a student's find. Hu Qian stroked his beard and sighed. 7th grade elixir. There's a famous story about those. Back in the day, Venerable Feng took a 7th grade elixir, the Yin Yang Xian Long Dan, which allowed him to break through his limits and achieve the title of Venerable. Venerable, that the girls gasped, realizing just how incredible this elixir was. They knew 7th grade elixirs were precious, but they hadn't realized they could literally create a venerable. The little medical fairy was genuinely happy for Xiao Zhe. With this elixir, he was destined for greatness. Xiao Suner smiled faintly, happy for Xiao Zhe's good fortune. If Xiao Zhe couldn't reach the pinnacle of the Doqi continent, the obstacles they'd face together would be unimaginable. Convincing the ancient tribe's elders to agree to the marriage of Xiao Suner, who possessed the divine bloodline, would be like moving heaven and earth. But Xiao Zhe's been crushing it every step of the way, giving Xiao Suner confidence. Even she was a little scared by Xiao Zhe's cultivation speed. Without the divine bloodline, she worried she wouldn't be able to keep up. Han Yu was green with envy. A 7th grade elixir could create a Dozun. Its value was beyond measure, Yu Qian continued, but, this Vajra indestructible pill is different from the Yin Yang Black Dragon pill. He trailed off, and Xiao Zhe bowed respectfully. Please enlighten me, Vice Dean, that the inscription only mentioned the grade and name. He didn't know the specific effects. Ahem. Actually, I don't know the details, but the elders definitely do, that Hu Qian coughed, slightly embarrassed. He wasn't trying to show off, he really just didn't know. The elders shot Hu Qian a look, noting that he was done with his little show. At Xiao Zhe's urging, they spoke. The Vajra indestructible pill is an ancient pill. Legend says an ancient alchemist, dissatisfied with the human race's weak physique, searched far and wide for materials to strengthen the body, hoping to create an elixir that would make humans as tough as monsters. Through relentless research, he created the Vajra indestructible pill, that everyone marveled at the alchemist's creativity. To create a pill that made the human body as strong as a monster. The elder in grey continued, this Vajra indestructible pill not only makes the body comparable to that of Warcraft, but also makes physical training twice as effective. Taking it makes strengthening your body easier. Eyes widened in astonishment. Xiao Zhe was racking his brain. This elixir was truly extraordinary, but now he had to figure out how to get Suner to take it. She'd never accept a 7th grade elixir as a gift, but Xiao Zhe was dying for that tenfold feedback. As everyone was processing the news, Bai Qing stumbled out, looking defeated. He hadn't seen anything worthwhile since Xiao Zhe left. He saw the looks of shock and confusion in the other's eyes and wondered what he had missed. Hu Qian, seeing that the elders had finished examining Bai Qing, waved to the group. Let's go, he said, leading them away. Bai Qing didn't dare disobey the vice dean and buried his questions. Back at the book pavilion, Hu Qian said, get ready to enter the inner courtyard. Please keep reading. I beg you to use your little hands and pull it to the last page of the book. Thank you. Thanks to Sunshine at Noon, Fantasyland, Book Friends 20230821827_EB, Wind Sound Butterfly Soul and Thunder Prison for their monthly ticket support. Many thanks. Chapter 66 Goodwill and Preparation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hu Qian gave the 5 students in front of him a knowing look. The competition in the inner court is a whole different ballgame compared to the outer court. As freshmen, if you try to go it alone, you're going to get burned. You 5 are the best of the best. If you stick together, you'll have a much better shot at surviving in there. The inner court has its own set of rules, and the connections you might have won't mean much. He paused, looking at Xiao Zhe and his group. Xiao Zhe remained calm. The little medical fairy and Xiao Suner stood beside him, clearly seeing him as their leader. Han Yu nodded, taking his words to heart. Bai Qing, however, just stared at the ground, looking gloomy. Seeing this, Hu Qian knew his advice hadn't landed. All right, I've said my piece. It's up to you what you do with it. Hu Qian waved his hand, dismissing them. Just as they were about to leave, he called out, Xiao Zhe, hang back for a sec. Xiao Zhe was surprised, then quickly realized it was about his training plan. He gestured to Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy, letting them know not to worry. Han Yu and Bai Qing were puzzled. Why single out Xiao Zhe? They figured the vice president, a big shot who ran the entire outer court, had seen it all. He wouldn't be particularly impressed by Xiao Zhe. After the others left, Xiao Zhe returned to the table, waiting for Hu Qian to speak. You probably know why I asked you to stay, right? Hu Qian asked, his tone unusually kind. He probably didn't even realize it himself, but he was speaking to Xiao Zhe with more warmth than he usually showed his own granddaughter, Hu Jia. After all, Xiao Zhe was incredibly talented, yet humble and polite. What wasn't to like? Is it about the training plan, Vice Dean? Exactly. The training plan and the inner court special rules, which I just mentioned. Your current training plan won't work in the inner academy. We originally planned for you to train for 2 years, but you managed to get into the inner academy in just 1. While the plan has changed, you've been enjoying some perks in the outer court. But once you're in the inner court, those perks disappear. You need to be ready for that. Xiao Zhe had already anticipated this, so he didn't react strongly. I understand. I'll adapt. That's the spirit. But don't worry, one part of the training plan hasn't changed. Hu Qian said, a smile in his eyes. Xiao Zhe looked surprised, and Hu Qian decided not to keep him in suspense any longer. The medicine refining department is separate from both the inner and outer houses, so the benefits we secured before still apply. A flicker of surprise crossed Xiao Zhe's face. The amount of elixirs had been crucial before he became an alchemist. Thank you, Vice President. Xiao Zhe knew Hu Qian had likely pulled some strings. Keeping the amount of elixir refining probably meant the vice president and the department had to give something up. Keep working hard, kid. Make Canaan Academy proud. Hu Qian couldn't help but express his true feelings. He genuinely cared for Xiao Zhe. Even without a formal master-disciple relationship, Hu Qian treated Xiao Zhe like one of his own, doing everything he could to help him. I'll never forget your kindness, Vice President. Xiao Zhe didn't make any empty promises, he wasn't in a position to do so. But one day, he'd repay that kindness tenfold. Alright, head back. You'll be entering the inner court in about 5 days. Use this time to get stronger. It'll make things easier. Xiao Zhe bowed and left. Hu Qian watched him go, noticing 3 girls waiting for him outside. He shook his head and chuckled. The kids got it all. But geniuses always draw attention. It's a shame my granddaughter can't land someone so outstanding. Hu Qian sighed, thinking of his troublesome granddaughter. He'd heard about her confession to Xiao Suner. Oh well, they'll figure it out. Outside, Xiao Zhe wasn't surprised to see Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy. Han Yu's presence, however, was unexpected. The 3 seemed to be getting along well. Senior Han Yu. Xiao Zhe greeted her politely. Xiao Zhe, you heard what the vice dean said about the inner court. It's a dog-eat-dog world in there. The first stage of entry isn't easy. I was wondering if we could team up. Han Yu got straight to the point. Xiao Zhe hesitated, then looked at the little medical fairy and Xiao Suner. Seeing that they were okay with it, he smiled. I'd be honored to work with you, Senior Han Yu. Han Yu breathed a sigh of relief. I have a relative in the inner court who knows the lay of the land. It's better than going in blind. Xiao Zhe and Han Yu chatted for a bit, then Xiao Zhe said goodbye. He left Canaan College with Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy. They enjoyed a few days in Canaan City. It was hard to get out once you were in the inner court. They also stocked up on supplies, like clothes. They were still teenagers, growing fast. Sometimes they needed a change of clothes during the day. Xiao Zhe also sent a letter to the Xiao family through Canaan College's channels. He let Xiao Zhan and Xiao Yan know he was doing well, so they wouldn't worry. They could write back if anything urgent came up. He'd been pushing himself hard lately and needed to relax. Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy both leveled up, getting closer to becoming great Do masters. After some persuasion, Xiao Suner also accepted the Vajra immortal pill Xiao Zhe had given her. The persuasion involved explaining everything carefully. The coercion was just saying he'd never eat it. The 2 elders from the library pavilion had also said that even though the elixir had a sealing method, it was ancient. Once the seal was broken, it had to be taken immediately, or it might lose its potency. Suna had no choice but to accept it. She decided to take the immortal elixir when she was promoted to the great fighter. Finally, Xiao Zhe said goodbye to his friends and mentors at Canaan College. It was time to enter the inner court. Chapter 67 by Chang's Nightmare. Extraordinary Fighting Skills. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In front of the vice president's office, the courtyard buzzed with students. Today was the day to enter the inner court, the heart of Canaan College. For the outer court students, making it into the inner court was a huge deal. Every year, underclassmen came to see them off, a little wistful, hoping to join them next year. The students murmured in the open space, while those headed to Canaan Academy puffed out their chests, basking in the envy. Their hard work was paying off. 2 figures, in particular, stood out. One was tall and imposing, but looked gloomy. Unlike the elated crowd, Bai Cheng couldn't shake the library incident from his mind. That 7th grade elixir, the Vajra Immortal Pill, had become his personal torment. He kept seeing it in his dreams, reaching for it, only to be knocked back by a wave of energy. In the end, no matter how hard he tried, the pill always ended up in Xiao Zhe's hands. That's when Bai Cheng would wake up, convinced this elixir was his destiny. Why did Xiao Zhe win? His thoughts twisted, consumed by the fact that Xiao Zhe had stolen his chance, his 7th grade elixir. Watching it slip through his fingers had warped his thinking. Nearby, Hanyu shook her head at Bai Cheng's dark mood. He didn't have what it took. She noticed the murmuring around her and fell silent, sensing something. She looked around and saw Xiao Zhe leading 2 others toward them. Every student regarded Xiao Zhe with a mix of awe and admiration. He'd only been at Canaan College for a year and already broken 2 records. First, the highest score in the Warcraft hunting competition. Second, winning the inner court selection event, solo, against everyone else. No one knew how he'd done it. Mysterious and powerful, that was Xiao Zhe's reputation. Xiao Zhe reached the center and nodded to Hanyu, then glanced at the brooding Bai Cheng. Deciding to ignore him and avoid trouble, he'd noticed Bai Cheng's sour expression since the inner court selection. Xiao Zhe briefly wondered about it before dismissing it. Yesterday, he'd practiced the advanced Xian level fighting skill, Blue Sea Waves, reaching the Deshang level, yet, unlike other Xian level skills, he didn't feel the same sense of integration. He'd practiced advanced Xian level skills before, but Blue Sea Waves felt different. It had taken months of on and off practice, culminating in a breakthrough yesterday. If he was uncertain, he would ask the vice president. He was the one who'd chosen the technique for him, so he'd know best. But with the crowd, it was better to wait until later. Soon after Xiao Zhe arrived, the vice dean and several elders emerged. Hu Qian was surprised by the crowd. While people always gathered to watch, this was more than usual. He saw that many eyes were on Xiao Zhe. Figuring that even after entering the inner court, Xiao Zhe's name would linger in the outer court. After all, his records were historic, something to tell your grandkids about. Even Hu Qian felt it. Xiao Zhe was on track to make a serious mark on Canaan College. He'd never seen a genius like this during his tenure as deputy dean. The deputy dean made brief opening remarks, congratulating the new inner court students and encouraging the others to strive for the same. The cliched statement resonated this year because of the young man in the center. Despite his youth, he had a unique presence. Xiao Zhe noticed the admiring gazes and smiled, addressing the crowd. Keep at it, guys. I'll see you in the inner court. His voice wasn't loud, but with the deputy dean and elders present, the area was quiet. Everyone heard him. Hearing their idol's words, many students clenched their fists, faces flushed. Xiao Zhe, I'll get there. I'll follow in your footsteps and join you in the inner court. By the time I get there, you'll probably be famous in the inner court. The students declared, releasing their excitement. Xiao Zhe smiled and waved. The vice president exchanged amused glances with the elders. Their expression said it all. Your words aren't as effective as his. Hu Qian shrugged and gestured skyward. 10 huge griffins descended, stirring the air. All right, kids, it's getting late. Hop on the griffins. The inner court is quite a ways off. 5 to a griffin. Seeing some students nearly falling off due to excitement, Xiao Zhe said to Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy, come on, it's been a while since I rode a griffin. Xiao Zhe leaped lightly onto a chair, settling in comfortably. Xiao Suner and the little medical fairy sat on either side. He knew the inner court was far, and standing on a griffin's back would be exhausting. Taking his cue, the other students stopped showing off and sat obediently. The vice dean, used to students acting tough, chuckled. This kid had no need to impress anyone, as long as he was comfy. A pair of magnificent fighting wings unfurled from Hu Qian's back. Okay, let's head to the inner court. 10 griffins, escorted by 4 powerful fighting emperors, soared toward the distant mountains. Xiao Zhe saw his chance to ask questions had passed, and would have to wait, until he entered the inner courtyard and started the fire energy hunting competition. Hu Qian would be free then, so he could ask his questions. Chapter 68 Who is the Hunter? Earth Level Low-Level Fighting Skills. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The Endless Back Mountains are crawling with magical beasts, so Canaan Academy throws a monster hunting competition every year. It's their way of keeping the beast population in check and preventing them from swarming the college, but this isn't just about numbers. Some seriously powerful magical beasts roam these mountains. A squadron of 10 griffins is basically a flashing neon sign for any creature out there. Sure enough, flying monsters started swarming from all directions, looking for a cheap shot at the newbie team. The problem is, these low-level flyers aren't exactly Mensa material. They didn't even register that they were messing with a crew escorted by 4 Do Huangs. Those monsters were vaporized into red mist before they even got close. Xiao Zhe was riding a griffin in the middle of the pack. He watched as the Do Huangs effortlessly manipulated the elements, unleashing power that could level mountains. A pang of envy shot through him. Once you hit Do Huang, you can tap into the energy around you. But Do Huangs take it to a whole new level. Their power is off the charts. Nothing hostile got within 50 meters of the griffin squad, of course. There are high-level monsters in the endless mountains, too, but at that point, they've got some brains. They knew better than to pick a fight with 4 Do Huangs, so they left the new team alone. After 2 hours of uneventful flight, the griffin team touched down in a mountain stream. While the students gawked, Hu Qian casually waved his hand, blasting a hole in space. The air shimmered like water. Then, a massive, pale silver door, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, just appeared out of nowhere. Even Xiao Zhe was impressed. He knew it existed, but his senses hadn't picked it up at all. Guess I've still got a lot to learn about how the big leagues operate. The massive silver door creaked open, revealing more forest. The griffins filed in, disappearing as if they were never there. Xiao Zhe followed them through the door. Once everyone was inside, it slowly swung shut. With a ripple in the air, the pale silver door vanished. Inside, it was still a forest, but something was different. A group of people was waiting. 2 old men were in charge, backed by a dozen middle-aged guys and some younger students. The students wore uniforms with a tower emblem on their chests. Old Man Yen, Old Man Lin, is it your turn on duty this year? That Hu Qian greeted them first. The 2 old guys bantered with Hu Qian, so they were obviously on good terms. How are the freshmen looking this year? Heard you've got a ringer in this class. Hiding him away in the outer courtyard like buried treasure. That Hu Qian rolled his eyes. What are you talking about? I'm not hiding anyone. If I was, would I be sending him to the inner courtyard? That Hu Qian nodded towards Xiao Zhe, drawing the elders' attention. Xiao Zhe saw them looking and gave a friendly wave. The 2 old men smiled and nodded back, exchanging glances that showed they'd picked up on something special about him. Then, an older student standing behind the 2 elders chimed in. Looks like a lot of girls in this year's class, including a couple of hotties. That he punctuated his observation with a wolf whistle. Elder Lin spun around, glaring at him. Shut your mouth. You're embarrassing yourself. That the elder was irritated by the inner courtyard students' behavior, especially compared to Xiao Zhe's politeness. Whoever made that comment just lost 5 days of fire energy. What? That the guy's face went white. He hadn't expected to get penalized just for making a comment. He didn't dare argue. The elders and the inner courtyard held all the power. Now he was kicking himself. Why couldn't he just keep his mouth shut? Xiao Zhe glanced at the older student, whose whistle had been directed pretty much right at him. It's been a while since I've thrown a punch. My fists are starting to itch. He kept his face neutral, but his mind was racing. The elders handed down the punishment, but it was up to him to get even. After scolding the students, Elder Lin handed out cards to each student. Xiao Zhe touched the black card in his hand, feeling a faint warmth. It had a red number 5 on it. He shot a glance at the older students, who were eyeing the newbies like they were prey. Xiao Zhe slipped the card into his ring. We'll see who the hunter is, he thought. Elder Lin explained the rules, and the freshmen scattered into the forest. Bai Cheng gave Xiao Zhe a look and headed off. Xiao Suner, Little Medical Fairy, and Han Yu all seemed confused when Xiao Zhe didn't move. Xiao Zhe just gave them a reassuring glance. He approached Vice Dean Hu Qian, who was curious about what he wanted. Vice Dean, I wanted to ask you something about the Xian-level fighting skill, Blue Sea Waves, that you gave me earlier. I've got some questions. Hu Qian raised his eyebrows in surprise. Elder Lin glanced at Hu Qian. You gave him the Blue Sea Waves. Elder Yen waved his hand, signaling the middle-aged men to organize the older students. Hu Qian was a bit surprised and asked Xiao Zhe what was up. With only the 3 elders, his teammates, and himself present, Xiao Zhe laid it all out. I've mastered the Blue Sea Waves, but I feel like I'm hitting a wall. When I go all out, I feel like there should be follow-up moves, but I can't figure them out. Hu Qian and the 2 elders exchanged glances. They hadn't expected Xiao Zhe to pick up on that. Hu Qian decided to come clean. Actually, the full Blue Sea Storm is an Earth-level fighting skill. Xiao Zhe was stunned, and Han Yu and the others looked shocked. This fighting skill came from some ruins. The Academy usually gives it as a reward to elders who have done something special. It's incredibly powerful, and it doesn't seem like a water-based skill at all. Some elders were ecstatic and reached the mastery stage. But when they used it at full power, it drained their fighting spirit and even made them weaker. So, the dean split the skill into 2 parts. The Blue Sea Waves is the first part, and it's pretty safe, with Xian-level power. The second part is much more dangerous. Even for an elder, one wrong move and you're drained of your fighting spirit. You should know that the Blue Sea Waves lets you unleash powerful waves to attack your enemy. The reason you feel like you're hitting a wall is because the stormy waves can be stacked. Each layer adds more power, but it also sucks up more fighting energy. After hearing the Vice Dean's explanation, Xiao Zhe finally understood. Turns out it was a low-level earth skill. I've already mastered half of it. Maybe I should try to get the full version. Chapter 69 Secret Collusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hu Qian, noticing the thoughtful look on Xiao Zhe's face, couldn't help but ask, Hey kid, you're actually interested in this technique, huh? Xiao Zhe hesitated, then nodded. After all, Deputy Dean Hu Qian was likely to know where to find the second part of it. Hu Qian exchanged a look with the 2 elders, then sighed and said, the dean himself split this technique so perfectly that even most elders at a high level would have trouble detecting it. Seems you're destined for it. Trying it out won't hurt either. The great elder has the second part. If you run into any trouble practicing it, just ask him for help. Xiao Zhe gratefully saluted Hu Qian, then realized the deputy dean hadn't mentioned how to contact the great elder. Deputy Dean, how do I get in touch with the great elder? Don't worry about it. I'll tell him myself. Haven't seen the old guy in a while. Hu Qian waved his hand, checked the time, and told Xiao Zhe, all right, kid, you and your team have been held up long enough. Get moving. This fire hunt is to get you used to the inner courtyard. Someone like you should be right at home, right? We'll do our best to adapt, Xiao Zhe replied, cutting himself short. He said goodbye to Hu Qian and the 2 elders, then led the 3 girls toward the forest. As they left, Elder Lin said to Hu Qian, why aren't you heading to the inner courtyard already? Relax, things in the outer court will be quieter after the inner court selections. I can stick around a bit longer. Just wanna see what kind of amazing moves that kid pulls off in the fire hunt. The 2 elders exchanged glances, realizing Hu Qian valued Xiao Zhe far more than they'd thought. It piqued their interest. After all, there had to be something special about him to impress an old-timer like Hu Qian so much. Once inside the forest, the teams of new and old students had vanished. As the 4 of them walked, Han Yu's voice echoed through the trees. The fire energy hunt is to sharpen our skills and get us used to the inner courtyard's competitive environment. Xiao Suner and the little fairy nodded in understanding as Han Yu explained. Xiao Zhe glanced at her. Of course. With a teammate who knew the ins and outs, he didn't have to waste his breath. Felt like she was a prophet or something. Fire energy is the most important resource in the inner courtyard. Some students who have a hard time getting resources normally use this fire hunt to grab fire energy from the newbies. Usually, it's the weaker students who get targeted. The strong ones don't need to. The little fairy sighed in relief. Sounds like we should have no problem getting through this, right? But Han Yu shook her head solemnly. No, things are a little different this year. Seeing Xiao Zhe's gaze turn to her, she perked up and started to explain. You know how I missed the inner court selections because I ran into that monster Lin Xiuya, right? Lin Xiuya and Yan Hao nearly dominated the last fire hunt. I heard a lot of strong upperclassmen are interested in it this year, too. Xiao Zhe frowned slightly and asked Han Yu, are these two things connected? Well, Han Yu said, realizing her explanation was a little confusing. Some older students just love beating up geniuses before they get big. Xiao Zhe scratched his head. That's a unique hobby. Like that senior who beat Lin Xiuya and Yan Hao last year, he brags about it all the time in the inner courtyard. And Lin Xiuya's on the strong list now. Xiao Zhe asked curiously, isn't Lin Xiuya going to cause him trouble? I don't know much about that. Han Yu shook her head. Forget the gossip. Let's find a place to rest for a bit. We have 7 days to go. No need to rush. Ignoring Han Yu's puzzled look, Xiao Zhe led them to a creek and set up camp. Didn't you say fire energy was important? Sounds like a good chance to get some. Han Yu's eyes widened. Even she thought Xiao Zhe's idea was pretty bold. But with his strength, it wasn't impossible. Okay, your idea's crazy, but what else am I gonna do? I'm your teammate. And so, the 4-person team settled in by the creek. Meanwhile, Bai Cheng, formerly on Xiao Zhe's team, finally found the team of older students in white clothes. Cousin Bai Feng. You gotta help me. The young man leading the group frowned slightly. As soon as Bai Cheng saw him, it was, you gotta help me. This cousin was a pain in the butt. Oh well. Cousin was cousin. He might as well hear him out. Cousin Bai Cheng, hold on. What's the problem? I got robbed. Bai Cheng said with a nasty look, leaving out a lot of crucial details and twisting the facts. He claimed an elixir, one that hadn't even been his to begin with, had been in his grasp, only to be snatched away by Xiao Zhe. What? You're saying you had a 7th grade elixir and your teammate took it? Bai Feng blurted out. The students behind him looked at Bai Cheng, eyes wide. It's true. You gotta do something, cuz. If that's really how it went down, I'll definitely do something about it. We'll grab the elixir, and we'll have something to brag about to the elders. Bai Cheng nodded eagerly. He knew how strong his cousin was, a 3-star fighting spirit. His team was also the strongest in the fire energy hunt, the White Demon team. Bai Feng clapped Bai Cheng on the shoulder, a glint of greed in his eyes. A 7th grade elixir. Asterisk, you're not ready for the impact of a 7th grade elixir. Let your cousin take on that burden for you. He'd beaten 2 geniuses, Lin Xiuya and Yan Hao, the previous year, giving himself something to brag about. Now, not only would he have deeds to brag about, but he'd get an elixir, too. Ever since beating Lin Xiuya and Yan Hao, Bai Feng had become obsessed with it. Beating up geniuses before they matured. When they actually made something of themselves, he could always say he beat them back in the day. Of course, this was a private matter. He couldn't let Lin Xiuya hear him. He'd probably get his butt kicked. Bai Feng was already looking forward to beating this Xiao Zhe kid and stealing his 7th grade elixir. Xiao Zhe beating him? Yeah, right. He'd beaten Lin Xiuya. There was no way anyone could be more of a monster than Lin Xiuya. Chapter 70 Start Hunting. Elders Misunderstanding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a day of rest by a small stream, Xiao Zhe and the three girls continued on their way. The fire hunting competition was supposed to last 7 days, but usually, it didn't. Xiao Yan stretched it to 7 days because he wanted to unite all the new students and defeat the old guard. Normally, it wrapped up in 2 or 3 days. Even new inner courtyard students didn't need a week to trek through the forest. Xiao Zhe had deliberately taken a day off, letting the prey fatten up for a good harvest. As they walked, Xiao Zhe used his soul perception. With his current abilities, no old student could escape his notice if he was really trying. Gotcha! Xiao Zhe whispered, signaled to the others, and shot ahead. By the time Han Yu and the others arrived, Xiao Zhe was already standing over 5 prone figures who looked utterly bewildered. They were all thinking the same thing. What the heck just happened? It had been less than a minute. Han Yu watched the 5 old students on the ground and thought, total domination. Alright, guys, hand over your cards, or things are gonna get rough. I'd hate to waste energy beating you all up when you're already down. Xiao Zhe said casually. The 5 old students paled, not doubting his words for a second. He'd taken them down instantly. The moment Xiao Zhe had appeared, they'd felt paralyzed, barely able to twitch. This weird attack had them completely freaked out. Don't do it. We'll give it to you. The 5 cooperated, and Xiao Zhe transferred the fire energy from their crystal cards to his own. He couldn't take it all, leaving them with 7 days worth of fire energy. However, if their fire energy dropped below 10, they'd be forced to leave the forest and drop out of the competition. There were the same number of old student teams as new, 10 teams of 5. Now there were only 9, the 5 on the ground watched them leave, relieved. The monster was finally gone. Reaching a secluded spot, Xiao Zhe pulled out his black card. Okay, that's a total of 120 fire energy. Time to split it evenly. The little fairy doctor and Xiao Suna readily agreed, but Han Yu hesitated. Xiao Zhe, if we split it equally, aren't I getting too much of a free ride? I told you about the fire energy in the first place. Han Yu figured that Xiao Zhe could have gotten that information from interrogating the old students. Xiao Zhe glanced at her and said, "You're with me now, so I can't play favorites. Even if it's only temporary, we're still teammates." Seeing Han Yu about to argue, the little fairy doctor took her hand and winked. Han Yu, majority rules, and the 3 of us have agreed to split it evenly. Besides, there's no need to be so generous. Well. Han Yu thought for a moment and finally nodded. She took out her crystal card and a dark blue scroll. Since I'm getting a good deal, here. This is a treasure map I stumbled upon. Who knows what it's worth? Consider it a thank you. Xiao Zhe looked at the scroll, which radiated a strange, ancient energy. In that case, thanks, Han Yu. Fire energy distribution settled. Xiao Zhe marked some fire energy on the crystal cards for the 3 of them before taking the scroll. Seeing him accept it, Han Yu sighed in relief. It was a treasure map, sure, but its value was a big question mark. She was still coming out ahead. Xiao Zhe was probably just taking it to put her mind at ease. Han Yu looked at his back, her eyes filled with gratitude. They set off again, hitting one old student team after another. Soon, rumors spread through the forest that the new students were hunting the old ones. Hidden in the branches of a tree, 3 elders sat cross-legged. That little guy took a day off to let his prey get fatter. Ha! Hu Qian burst out laughing, finding Xiao Zhe's tactic hilarious. That's the 6th old student team. With his strength, even the Baisha team shouldn't be a problem. Elder Lin said, surprised. Is the outer courtyard training program really that good? How did he reach Douling at his age? Elder Yen was curious. He hadn't paid much attention to the outer courtyard and was impressed by Xiao Zhe's current abilities. Hu Qian shook his head, annoyed. If the outer courtyard was that great, I'd be getting top candidates every year. The sad thing is, he barely benefited from the training at all. Elder Lin and Elder Yen were confused. What was he talking about? Hey, are you taking kickbacks or something? Elder Lin asked bluntly, making Hu Qian roll his eyes. Come on. You know about the training plan, the library access and the elixirs. He got 2 earth-level skills from the library, 1 water and 1 poison. He used the water one himself, and gave the poison one to the girl with him. Elder Lin and Elder Yen were shocked. How lucky could he be to get 2 Earth-level skills the first time he went to the library? More importantly, he treated those skills like they were nothing, casually giving one away. And he traded his elixirs for ones that help fire attribute users, Hu Qian added. Elder Lin was stunned. Didn't you say he has a water attribute? Did he give it to the other girl? Seeing their shock, Hu Qian nodded proudly. He went from great fighting master to fighting spirit in a year. The training plan only got him 1 skill. The rest was all him. Elder Yen frowned. If he'd used everything for himself, he'd probably be a high-level spirit fighter by now, right? Elder Lin agreed. He's basically carrying those 2 girls. No wonder they only have eyes for him. Elder Yen said, envying them. If someone did that much for me, I'd devote myself to them completely. Hearing that, Hu Qian grimaced. Stop it, old man, that's just gross. Elder Yen rolled his eyes and ignored him. Lost in his fantasy, the 3 old men bickered, showing their close friendship. As they talked, Xiao Zhe and the others ran into another team. If you're enjoying the story, please keep reading. And please scroll to the end of the book. Thank you.